Hi, welcome to the fifth video in my series of track breakdowns for my album Motions, which I just launched under my alias Project AER on July 15th, so it's out now. And we're doing the tracks in order. So this is day 5, this is track 5, this is the 5th track, it's called One for Reflection. Let's jump right into it. So first off, let's start with having a look at the intro here. That's the intro. So there's a few elements in the intro. One is the filtered drums, which is just my drums, but bounced down with a telephone EQ and then just a little bit of delay with a 50-50 mix on Replica here. So if we hear this dry, it's just the drums. So I really like this harsh effect preset that Replica has. So you can kind of hear the drums go from this to this. It's just a very nice sound. This song is really simplistic. There are literally only 2 chords throughout pretty much the whole thing. I don't think that I actually use any other chords. It's just these 2 chords here, which you start to hear on the Rhodes at the intro, which sound like this. And this is just something from the Contact Factory library, the Mark I classic in the electric pianos. So even though I'm using just 2 chords, I'm changing up the voicings ever so slightly just to try and make it a bit more interesting to listen to. Then there's just a bit of EQ on there, a bit of ozone imaging, because I think it's actually a mono instrument. No, it's actually stereo. But still, it helps make it nice and wide, and I'm just using a bit of Oak Sound Soothe on there just to kind of just get any kind of extra resonance on the lows automatically without me having to put too much work in, I guess. You also hear in the intro a Synth Arp, which has a automation on the high cut frequency, which you'll hear here. Again, more sort of Alcy vibes. I'm very inspired by his music, so quite a heavy EQ on that. Bit of Replica as well, to kind of give it a bit of a delay feel, and then it's going to my reverb mix. Which just sounds quite nice, it's very dreamy. There's some bedroom ambience, which is from a sample pack. Just has like a sort of room tone with a bit of just like noise here and there, which I really like. And just EQing out the lows there. There's also a sound of someone walking, which I've used in a few songs. I also pan it as well, so I automate the panning so it sounds like they move across the stereo field. So you can hear it going from left. You can see it here slowly going over to the right. And then there's the door closing here, which is on the right, which is where they end up. I just liked what that kind of said to the song. Like, it kind of almost felt like just sort of leaving. It felt, because that's what I think that this song sort of feels like to me. It feels like, reflecting upon like someone or something kind of leaving your life, like that, and I kind of wanted to incorporate that into the song in some way. Similar to In the Shade, there's a kind of repeating guitar part. There's one on the left, which sounds like this, which is fading in. Just a bit of EQ on that. And then one on the right, which sounds like this. Very similar parts, but when you hear them together, just creates a nice wide stereo image with, and it sounds very pretty. There's a bunch of vocals in here. I'm not going to solo them because I'm actually kind of self-conscious about these vocals. So you're just going to have to use your imagination for what they sound like on their own. There's also some particles here as well. So my ambient piano continues on these tracks, but using Noir's particles only here, which sounds like this. This is using a slightly different MIDI because there is a second piano part, which we'll come to in just a moment. So that's super subtle. Then there's a reversed ride, which is, I think, the same ride I use in quite a few tracks, just to help transition it. And again, a snare on the 4 as well. So then we move into the first beat section here. There isn't really a breakdown to this. It just kind of has a little sort of quarter note break, and then it just kind of continues into a sort of B section. I think when I write songs, it's very easy to fall into the trapping of like doing the same structure over and over, and there is almost like a template to Project AER songs. So this is kind of one of those instances where I'm trying to sort of break from tradition a little bit and do something that feels a bit different, and especially when you kind of have lots of songs in an album setting, like with Motions, you want to try and break the flow up and not just kind of have every song feel like it's, you know, a different version of the exact same thing. And I think I sort of achieved that here just by kind of not having that breakdown. Plus there's less work to do, so you know. So in this first section we introduce the drums properly, where we have the kick, which has a bit of EQ on it. Let's solo it. So just muting it on the high end a little bit and just kind of softening it, and then just bringing down some of the punch a little bit. And then we have the snare, which is another one from Swum's sample pack. Just quite a bit of EQing going on here. Just to kind of have it be kind of, again, quite like a muted, sort of dampened sort of snare. Just a bit of folk sound soothe on there as well, just to kind of get some of the, because it has like a sort of bell tone in there as well that I guess he's layered in with the snare sound. And it's cool. I just wanted to try and suppress that a little bit. And then just some stereo imaging, because I don't think it was a MIDI sample. A mono sample. No, it wasn't, but I just wanted to add a bit more information to it. We then have this little percussive tops loop, which has some EQ, some side tuning to the drums, and a bit of ozone imaging going on. I really like sort of random, crunchy sort of sounds. You can get these quite easily yourself just by, you know, rustling paper or rustling leaves or recording yourself walking somewhere, or stuff like that. Carrier bags, you know, everything really. But sometimes it's just easy to just chuck a loop in there, and sometimes if the loop sounds good, who cares, right? We then have a hi-hat, which is being done in battery 4. It looks like I've played this in by kind of tapping it in to kind of get the difference in velocity here to kind of make it feel a little bit less static. But the hi-hat sounds like this. So some EQ, getting rid of that slightly more resonant frequency that you can see there, that's like sticking out a little bit. Just makes it a bit easier on the ears. And then there's a second hi-hat, which is a lot lower in volume. So together they'll sound like this. I do like that, being able to use two different hi-hats to get a sort of like kind of more syncopated feel, but it's a way of doing it and having it sound like a natural drum kit rather than just having it sound like a bunch of samples. I don't know if I did very well here, but hey. Then we have the ride, which is just the same ride from before, but the right way round. So that sounds like that. So all the drums together sound like this. Once again, I'm using Supercharger to kind of parallel compress them, although I don't have as much of the wet signal this time. I'm using about 30%. And then just doing some kind of mid-side EQing here to try and widen the drums a little bit and kind of make them a little bit less intense in the center and the high end, and then just cut out the lows on the sides once again. So the drums all together sound like this. Not too much going on with them. Then we have the bass, which is just going to be doing 2 notes kind of back and forth. So using the clean bass preset, bit of EQ to kind of just get rid of some of the resonant lows, and then just a bit of compression, which is barely touching the gain reduction, so there's really not too much going on with the bass on its own. So a slight bit of flair there, but nothing too complicated. Then we have the piano part here where we go into something a bit more complex. This was played in as well, because you can see that it's not very quantized, the velocities are all over the place, and that sounds like this. And that is using una corda. And there you go, that's that. We then have some guitar, which is the kind of lead part that you hear going all the way through. So I'm using a few things here. I've got obviously a bit of EQ on there. I'm using flare, which is a sort of flanger sort of sound, which is on a sort of half and half mix. Just sounds quite nice. So if we hear it completely dry, just the guitar rig and the EQ. Add the flare. Gives it that nice sort of modulated sound. Then we add the replica. Just makes it very nice and dreamy. Bit of ozone imaging going on just to widen it a little bit, and then some soothe just to smooth it out a little bit. We also have in here this windy Marina sample, which I found on Freesound, and it's just, I love how the texture of the sample sounds. I've used this on a few songs. Just 'cause it has all these random sort of clicking and stuff, and it just adds that little bit of texture. Don't even notice it. Then we fade in the same guitar parts from the intro here. Oh, I missed a bit of a guitar in the intro. Let's go back and do that. What part is this? Oh, it's the lead, but it's going to a reverb, I guess. Yeah, it's going to the reverb mix. So you can sort of hear it coming through there, just a sort of, there's a bit of a precursor before we drop into the kind of main section there. Then we go into this section here, where the drums get a little bit more interesting. We have some Foley and some other hi-hats here going on. I'll just solo the lot rather than going through everything, because they kind of play one at a time. So we have some Foley here, and then some hi-hats, and some more Foley. So I'm not actually EQing all of these on their own. Some of them I am, just to kind of cut out some of the lows. But I've actually sent them to another bus, which I've called Drums Tops, which will sound like this. So it's got all of the hi-hats and everything in there as well. And then the drums altogether start to sound like this. And then just as we go into the outro, the drums change up a little bit more, where I think I go to a hi-hat loop. No, sorry, a ride loop, which I think I transposed, yeah, by one semitone. And then we have a snare, which will be going to the reverb mix for the outro. There you go. So that's the drums. The bass stays the same. The piano part moves to the Rhodes. And the synth arp you can see starting to come back in here as well. The guitar parts stay the same, we lose the lead. The windy Marina sample continues, the vocal samples come back. And then in the outro we also have this pad, which is one of my favourite things about the outro. It just sounds so sort of haunting. And this is just a lapse thing as well from the piano pads thing. It's called Alien. It's just a very nice sound. I love the piano pads stuff from that sample pack. It's great. And there's also that bedroom room noise that sort of comes back as well. But that is pretty much all of that song, One for Reflection, which is track 5 off of Emotions. And I'll see you for the next video where we'll be doing track 6, which is called As She Goes. So yeah, as always, if this was helpful, or if you enjoyed it, leave a like or a thumbs up. They're the same thing. Leave a comment. I don't know. Subscribe. Tell your mum about it. I don't know. But yeah, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.